Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast, and I'm your host, the Sensible Hippie. Today's episode is nothing short of extraordinary. We are diving into a world where myth, mystery, and symbolism intertwine with our everyday reality. I had the incredible opportunity to speak with Robert W. Sullivan IV. He's an amazing person. He's a historian, a philosopher, antiquarian, a lay theologian, a mystic, radio TV personality, best-selling author of 5 books, CEO, and an attorney. Mr. Sullivan also is a Freemason of Amicable St. John's Lodge and a 32nd degree of the Scottish Rite. I don't know how he has any time at all, but yet he was so gracious to speak with us today. In our conversation, we explored the intriguing aspects of his upcoming book, delving into the mysterious Wizard of Oz curse and its startling connections to famous personalities like Princess Diana, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson. We also touched on the complex theories linking this curse to significant events such as 9/11 and the coronavirus pandemic. The tales and theories surrounding this curse and its broader implications are as fascinating as they are mysterious. But our journey doesn't stop there. We also ventured into the secretive world of Freemasonry. And let me tell you, just as our discussion was peaking, our connection got disrupted. Was it a coincidence? I don't know, possibly. It was a moment that threw us off, but it also added to the intrigue of our conversation. So, get ready to immerse yourself in a dialogue that is as captivating as it is enlightening. So, sit back and join me as we uncover these fascinating mysteries together. Well, thank you again. So, aloha, Robert. I'm in Hawaii. And you're where? In Maryland?
I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the Sensible Hippie Podcast. It's truly an honor to have you here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I've been really excited about this. So really thank you so much again for coming on. To start
My
off,
pleasure.
I'd love to hear, thank you. I'd love to hear about a little bit about your journey into the world of Freemasonry and your esoteric studies. What sparked your interest in this and particularly in cinema?
Right. Well, if on the Freemasonic aspect, I come from a long line of Maryland Freemasons, grandfather, great grandfather. So it was something I was always interested in. It skipped over my father; he's not one, but I was always interested in it. And in 1996, the opportunity to join a Masonic lodge here in Baltimore presented itself, which was for me very fortuitous because it was the time. It was a year that I kind of had off. I had just graduated Gettysburg College, and it was the year before I went to law school. So this was like perfect timing, very serendipitous. And I petitioned a lodge here in Baltimore, outside of Baltimore, and outside the city. And I went through the usual channels. I mean, I requested the application, I filled it out, I went through the interview process. I submitted the application. I was voted upon. I was invited to join, and I went through the first ritual in January. Let's see, it would have been January of '97. So we're coming up almost on, a few 30 years ago, almost on this. I joined the lodge, in 1997. And this, I kind of wrapped up the lodge, the Blue Lodge, the Master Mason degree, right as I was going to law school. So it worked out perfectly. So that was how I got involved with Freemasonry. And I guess for me, it all, as a child, I mean, it starts very early on for me. As a child, I was always interested in things like, the paranormal, ghosts, cryptozoology, UFOs, things like that, the mysteries. So, it always kind of came natural to me, and it was always something I was fascinated with as a child. I date myself when I was growing up. One of the shows that was real popular. This was, of course, pre-internet and 500 channels on TV. Was a show with Leonard Nimoy called In Search Of. I used to watch that show religiously, and the thing that really got me started with the movies was, again, this was very early on, was I grew up, of course, watching the Star Wars films, and this was the first three with Lucas. This was A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi, and I mean, those were critical to my childhood. Generation X, Holy Writ, as it were, and I I came to find out later on when I was in high school that the movies were essentially just a rebranding of ancient mythology, and this was in fact no state secret. George Lucas openly talks about this and admits it. And you get a book; it's the Joseph Campbell book, A Hero of a Thousand Faces, and I mean, you could see of course, you start thumbing through that and reading it, you can see the entire template of where Star Wars came from. But that was really sort of what jump started me with the movies. And then the other thing that was kind of odd, and this was when I was getting ready, when I was really in the heart of writing Royal Arch of Enoch, was, and I've been on other shows talking about this, was at the turn of not only the turn of the century, but the turn of the millennium, you had this rash of Gnostic films coming out, put out by Hollywood, that involved, the Christ Savior, but it was more of, like the divine illuminator figure, the ideas of false realities, of the demiurgic creator. I've talked about movies like The Matrix, The Truman Show, Fight Club, things like that. There was just this incredible, outpouring from Hollywood of these very, heavily Gnostic influenced films. And it was then that you could really see that you had a lot of occult, esoteric influence going on in Hollywood. And one of the things, I'll just wrap up on this, is, it's when you do research into this, it's clearly pervasive in Tinseltown, but the idea of using esoteric themes, Kabbalistic themes, I mean, this goes way, way back. I mean, you'll find this in the works of Shakespeare, Richard Wagner, Mozart. So it's really nothing new to Hollywood. They're just continuing on a tradition in the entertainment business of encoding, occult themes, in their work.
Is Freemasonry, is that an occult or is it more like a club?
It's a secret society that a fraternal order, you'll hear it called. It's essentially like a brotherhood. You have to be a male man, and you have to believe in God. Those are the two criteria to join it. Some people call it different things. People call it a secret society. Some people call it just a fraternal order. You can clearly see parallels with it with college sororities and fraternity houses. It just depends on your flavor of what you want to call it. The one thing that Masonry does that I think is pretty irrefutable, it uses, I mean, the one line you always hear, it teaches a system of morality through symbols, but it does a lot more than that. A lot of the rituals encode a lot of hidden meanings, a lot of hidden truths. At least that's my take from it. But it's in the sense that it conceals meaning. I mean, the word occult means hidden. So in the idea that it, hides things, I personally would have no problem using the term occult. If the person uses the term occult is meaning like witchcraft or something like that, then I would disagree with the term. But just the, like esoteric, occult, arcane, recondite, those are words that I would have no problem using in describing Masonic symbols, rituals, things like that.
Do they teach you those things while you're in there? I mean, what do you guys talk about?
Well, that's right. Well, the way it traditionally works is, there's some certain things, of course, that I can't talk about, but the stuff I can talk about is essentially, if you petition a lodge to join, you fill out a petition, you send it in with a check. A committee is usually then set up to interview you to make sure you're not, you're basically, a normal person. Once that is complete, it's called a committee. They set up a committee. I remember doing it. You meet with like three brothers, one at a time, and they'll just ask you questions. Mainly, do you believe in God, and where do you work, or what's your job? It's typical, yearbook questions. Once that's complete, then you're put to a ballot at the lodge where the brothers can vote on you, and that's you'll hear the expression blackball. And of course, when you're voted upon, you go in. It's private. I've done it myself. And you either drop a white ball, which means you approve, or you drop a black cube, which means you disapprove. If there's one black cube, person is out. It's rare that it happens. The only way a person really gets blackballed is if they have made an enemy in the lodge. If there's someone in the lodge who doesn't like them, um, that's mainly the main reason you'll get blackballed. However, that will usually come out even before the vote. If you're approved, then at that point you'll get scheduled to come up to the lodge to go through the first ritual. And the way that works is you'll come up, and they take you into a little antechamber. They put you in a sort of like a pajama-like costume, and you go in and do the ritual. They perform the first degree Masonic ritual. When it's concluded, you go back outside. You put your normal outfit on, whatever you wore up to the lodge, and then you go into a lecture. And this is, I think, what you're kind of asking me, where they explain a lot of the symbolism, a lot of the meaning in Masonry. But it's really, even at that point, it's really what I would call sort of like, it's a sort of a base explanation. It's not bad or anything, but there's a lot more to it. And this follows all three rituals. This follows the Fellowcraft ritual, which is the second degree, and then the Master Mason ritual, which is, the really probably the most important one of the three. And you'll get like a little lecture on what's going on and what you just went through. But there's really, and the lecture's given by the master of the lodge. But for me, you will find out there's a lot more to it than even that. And that's it. I mean, once you go through it, then you're a Freemason, and you can join you can join a high degree body if you want. You're free to go up to the lodge at any meetings, any functions. And for me, after I joined, if you read the works of people like Manly P. Hall, Albert Pike, in my estimation, you'll find there's a lot more going on to the ritual than even what's explained to you.
Yeah, that's incredible. So do you go to weekly meetings? Is there weekly meetings or monthly meetings or?
Right. The meetings usually occur twice a month. They run from about September to June, twice a month. I go occasionally, but not that often anymore. Sort of once you go through the ritual and once you see the ritual, a lot of it's very repetitive, but I do go from time to time. I certainly keep in touch with some of my lodge brethren. I have friends who are in the lodge. I have friends who are Freemasons in other states. But in a nutshell, the lodge meets from September through to June. In July and August, they do not meet. It's closed. It's what's called going dark. And the reason for that dates back to the creation of Freemasonry back in 1717, because in the summer months, there was no air conditioning and it became too hot. So they actually closed the lodge from July, they closed it for 2 months, July and August. And that's a tradition that carries forward to today. Back in the day, there was no air conditioning. It was too hot. So even today, they still close the lodges in July and August and reopen in September.
Wow. Given the secrecy of Masonry, I'm curious, anyone in your community that criticize your work or are upset that you speak the way you speak, and that in your books and the symbolism, do they get upset about that?
No, not really. If you read the Masonic literature, the one thing, the Masonic rituals, this essentially is all part of the public record. You can find this stuff online, you can find it in the libraries. When you go through the ritual, the one thing they don't really want you to talk about are like the passwords. These are what are known as like the tokens of recognition, how you can tell one Mason from another, the handshakes, things like that. The actual ritual itself, the symbolism, the philosophy, the history of the rituals, this is all fair game. You're free to talk about it. For me, from my standpoint, most Masons who are into my work like it. Of course, I can't make everybody happy. There are some Masons out there that do not like it. That's fine. Like I said, the work's not for everybody. From pretty much the book has been very well received. This is the Royal Arch of Enoch book. It's been pretty well received. There are some people who don't like it. Many years ago, I was on a podcast. This was many years ago. This was over 10 years ago now. And the host of the show was a Freemason. And we got into the book and we started getting into the esoteric side of things. And the guy just exploded on me and just hated the book. He said I was a demon. He thought I was demonically possessed and just started screaming at me. And eventually he cut me off. I eventually wound up hanging up on the show. If it happened today, I would hang up immediately or disconnect. This was, like I said, when I first started podcasting. He did email and apologize. I'm not going to name the person. And he did leave somewhat of a positive review on the book. But for the most part, it's been well received. But again, it's not for everybody. But not everything is.
That's true. That's true. Are there any connections with Freemason and the Illuminati at all?
Well, right. This is like a question that it depends on who you want to talk to, and it's one of those things where there's no like it's like asking where what's the history of Freemason, where we just don't know. I mean, there's different sources of what you want to believe. I can only give you my take on the Illuminati. The historical Illuminati. This is the one of 1776 of Adam Weishaupt. Um, from what I can tell by it and my research, this seems to be another one of these Jesuit counter-Reformation tricks. Um, the structure, the guy who founded it, Weishaupt, was a professor at the University of Ingolstadt. He was Jesuit trained. The entire hierarchy of the Illuminati is based on the Jesuits. The Jesuits were charged with the Counter-Reformation, which is the destruction of the West, the destruction of England, the destruction of all Protestant countries. Um, and the Illuminati is one of these vehicles that was sort of an infiltration device to kind of further that along. Um, it comes at a very interesting time in history because in 1776, when it hits, it was only a few years earlier that the Pope even had enough of the Jesuits and he outlaws them. They eventually reemerge after the wars of Napoleon, but they're pretty much powerless. They're pretty much at the figurehead organization at that point. But the at the time, from the 1500s up to about 1773, I mean, they're essentially the Langley of Europe, essentially. And my research has led me to believe that the Illuminati of Weishaupt was essentially another one of these counter-Reformation ruses. Um, Many Freemasons join it. Of course, it connects itself to Freemasonry, but a lot of Freemasons also abandoned it, and they abandoned it very early on. And one of the main guys on this was this guy named Adolf Knigge, who was a German aristocrat, sort of what you would call the de facto leader of German, Masonic esotericism in the late 18th century. And he joins the Illuminati thinking, oh, this is going to be the greatest thing ever. And he winds up leaving and he says, just get out of this. This is all just more Jesuit skullduggery. It's nothing more than that. Just leave it. So, by all accounts, the Illuminati seems to be off the history pages by, the early 19th century. There is strong evidence to suggest, and this, you could say it's a conspiracy theory, but believe it or not, there is some truth to this, that the Illuminati sort of reemerges at Yale University in 1832 as Skull and Bones. Um, this the structure of Skull and Bones strongly resembles the Illuminati, and in fact, Skull and Bones traces its origins to a German secret society. Which one could they be talking about? So, that's sort of the Robert Sullivan take on the Illuminati. Yes, it overlaps with Freemasonry. That's irrefutable. Um, and what I would say to end on the Illuminati is there is, you have the Weishaupt version of it. You actually have sort of an American spin-off of the Weishaupt Illuminati. You hear this term, I hear it less and less now, but there's this thing called the Colombian Illuminati. And this was the American side, the American version of the Illuminati. And the people who are running this were all the Royal Archmasons. The guy who was in charge of this was a guy named DeWitt Clinton, who was the former mayor of New York City, the former governor of New York State. Guys like Thomas Smith Webb, Ephraim Kirby, the Livingston family. These guys would have all been considered the Colombian Illuminati. This was the American side of it. This thing becomes defunct in the 1820s with the William Morgan affair. So that's sort of my take and what I can tell you about the Illuminati.
Wow, that's interesting. And you said that women are not allowed in Masonry?
Right. The Masonic Lodge, it's only men. It's men only. There is the two requirements is you have to be a male and you have to believe in a supreme being. You can't be an atheist or you can't be an agnostic. Those are the two requirements. There are Masonic organizations for women. The most popular, the most famous is the Eastern Star. That's a Masonic organization for women. I could give you sort of the textbook answer. Well, just say, oh, it's just Masonry just doesn't allow it. There's a reason for that, and that is when you study Freemasonry and you get into it, and you get into it into the depths that I have. The premier symbol within Masonry and the Masonic organization is centered around the sun. Apollo, as it were. The sun is the ultimate symbol within Freemasonry. The entire lodge operation is based on the sun. The way the lodge is even designed is based on the sun, the movement of the sun, or the perceived movement of the sun. And of course, the sun represents the masculine. The moon is the feminine. So the Masons, as a solar brotherhood, only admits men.
Has there anyone that tried to refute that and try to join and try to sue? I don't know. Women?
No, because
Okay.
it's a private organization. It doesn't take government funding, so it can admit who it wants. There's been no effort. Like I said, there are female, women Masonic organizations, so it's not like it's totally exclusionary or anything like that. And even in other orders you'll find this. Like at college fraternities, you have sorority houses. In the Odd Fellows, you have the Rebeccas. So you do have you always do seem to have these auxiliary organizations for women, and to my knowledge, no one has ever sued or pursued it in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, that's good. Is there a central head, I guess, of Freemasonry?
No, there's not. There's not at all. In England, there is. In England, you have a Grand Lodge of England, and that's where all the Masonic charters essentially in the United States come from. There is no Grand Lodge of Masonry that covers the entire United States. Rather, it's a state-by-state organization. Each state has its Grand Lodge. So I'm in Maryland, so I would fall under the aegis of the State Grand Lodge of Maryland. For example, right up the road is Pennsylvania. The State Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania can exercise no jurisdiction over me. It's just a state-to-state basis. Each state runs itself. There is no universal Grand Lodge of the United States within Masonry. This is a little not true when you get into the higher degrees. And the organization that I just mentioned, the Odd Fellows, they're unique also because they do have a United States Grand Lodge. They do have a lodge that encompasses the entire United States, and that was founded right here in Baltimore, where I am. Thomas Wildey, back in the late 1800s, or maybe early 19th century, I can't remember. But no, when it comes to Masonry, there is no universal like Grand Lodge. It's a state-by-state operation.
Interesting. So, can you visit that Oddfellows Lodge? Are you allowed to go in there?
No, in order to join the Odd Fellows, I'd have to be a member of the Odd Fellows, which I am not. In order to join, in order to get access to an Odd Fellow Lodge, you would have to become a member. I am not a member of the Odd Fellows.
Sorry,
The Masonry, Freemasonry
I don't
is.
have a connection with you right now.
I can go to my lodge anytime I want. I can go to a Maryland Grand Lodge meeting anytime I want. I'm in the Scottish Rite, so I can do anything I want with them. But if I went out of state and I wanted to go to a Masonic Lodge meeting,
Still
you would have
recording, but I don't see
to
or
likely
hear you.
contact
I'm
the
not sure if you
secretary,
can
and
see
then
or
they would
hear
have
me
to
at all.
call my lodge
Oh.
here in Maryland to make sure that I was a member, that I was on the level, as we say. And if it was if it was turned out that I was, and I was in good standing with my lodge, which I am, then I could go to another lodge meeting in another state. But just because I'm a Mason, I could not get access to a meeting of the Odd Fellows or the Knights of Pythias or any of these other organizations that are not related to Freemasonry.
I see. Interesting. I don't know on your side if it blacked out. On my side, there was about a 30-second interval where there was nothing. I couldn't see you. I couldn't hear you. So hopefully it recorded what you were saying. I guess we'll find out later. That was strange. Okay, sorry. So, can you hear me now? Uh-oh. There was a little point there where I couldn't hear you at all, and I couldn't see you, and then it looked like I heard your answer, and then all of a sudden you couldn't hear or see me.
Right.
But I could see you.
Yeah.
It was so weird. Does that usually happen?
Yeah, it happens more than often with me.
Oh, because we're talking about Freemason, maybe. Oh my gosh.
It's not the first time it's happened with me.
Really?
When I first started doing this, I did it over a landline telephone. I mean, this was back in, and the call would constantly drop or cut off, but the stuff we're talking about right now isn't really some of the more controversial stuff. So, I think it's probably a glitch in the system or whatever.
Can we
That's
talk
all right.
about your JFK and the missing brain? And that, yeah,
Sure,
so
anything you
that's
want.
been a lot of, I guess, a mystery and curiosity for a lot of people. They come up with a lot of different theories and things like that. But with your research, what have you come up with?
Right, right. Well, the thing that this really wasn't any research or anything. I was friends years ago with a Kennedy insider, and I can't name this
Sure.
person for various reasons, but I will say that this person is
Oh,
no longer alive. This person died many years ago, but he was very well connected with the John F. Kennedy family, and somehow or another, having a conversation with this person, the subject of Kennedy's missing brain came up, and he kind of looked at me funny, or I should say, he or she looked at me funny, and said, "Oh, I know right where it is." And I said, "Really? Where? Tell me." The person, said it was really, you know, like I said, no research or anything. And you got to know a little bit of the
yes, please.
backstory with this. Was when
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy was shot and killed in November of 1963, the autopsy was done at Bethesda Naval Hospital, and his brain was removed, and it was actually marked as evidence. It was known as Item 9, which is an interesting number to give it, but that's for another day. And anyway, the brain was eventually stored at the National Archives, and it went missing, I believe, on Halloween of all things in 1966. And it was right around that time. It was in, I think, early 1967. I'd have to look at the date. It was may have been in March of 1967. Kennedy's body was moved in Arlington National Cemetery. It was buried after the assassination, but it was moved to where it is right now with the flame on top, to the final resting place. And the story that was told to me was that the brain was taken out of the National Archives by Bobby Kennedy, his brother, because Bobby feared that the brain was going to wind up in like in a freak show, like in a collector's hand, and be put on an exhibit or displayed or something like that. And that terrified him. So the story that was relayed to me was Bobby Kennedy took the brain from the National Archives, and when his brother's body was being moved in Arlington, he entombed the brain with the body, put the brain with the body, and that's where the brain is. It's actually buried with the brother in Arlington. I have no reason to disbelieve this person. That was the story as it was relayed to me. I'll be the first to admit it's hearsay evidence. I have no personal knowledge of this. I have no reason to disbelieve this person. I've heard other people talk about this as well, and this seems to be the likely explanation. Again, I can't prove any of this, and it's hearsay. But the person who told it to me, I have every reason to believe, and I know this person wasn't, lying to me or putting me on or anything like that. So that's my understanding of where President Kennedy's brain is. It went missing after the assassination, but it's actually buried with him in Arlington, thanks to
Oh,
Robert
wow.
Kennedy.
That's interesting. So I'm curious, with your own books and your own writings, do you intentionally incorporate hidden symbols or esoteric references in your book? And if you can you share some of that? Do you?
Well, I do, and yeah, a little bit. I do some encoding in my books, of things. You can take a look at some of the chapters and the chapters in the books, things like that. I like it for people
Okay.
to figure it
Okay.
out on their own. But there is hidden stuff in
Oh,
all the
that's
books,
pretty
absolutely.
cool. And so, yeah,
Oh,
why
of
wouldn't
course,
you, right? You have to.
exactly.
So, Gematria, what is that? And I think is that something that Crowley came up with?
No, this actually goes back
Oh,
thousands of years. It's gematria is simply assigning numeric values to letters and phrases. It comes out of the world of Kabbalah and Hebrew mysticism. Aleister Crowley develops his own system of gematria for this new age, which he prophesized. But it goes way, way back. And this is actually one of the things I'm working on with this new book I'm working on. I'm actually doing two books at once. Yeah, there's a lot of Crowley's gematria that centers around the movie The Wizard of Oz, of all things, and how it is designating this new age of Horus that is upon us. It's without question one of the most fascinating things I've ever looked at. This is again the subject. This is one of the main subjects of this new book I'm working on called Symbolism 4. Of course, this is after part 3, and I'm also doing a book called Symbolism Oz, which is just going to get into all this and all the allegories and allusions in the Wizard of Oz. I've talked about it before. I get into it a little bit in the very first book, the first cinema book, Cinema Symbolism, but there's a lot more to it that I want to explore. And there's these very Ozian Crowley numbers that pop up in all these tragedies that is quite astounding. I've never quite seen anything like it. That is both, it's both a death hex, but it's also, I believe it was generated by the Native Americans after the Battle of Wounded Knee and was placed on L. Frank Baum at some time. He's the guy who wrote the novels. But for some reason, it latched onto Crowley's Gematria because a lot of his key numbers are the Wizard of Oz. And it's a killing curse, but it's also designating this new age of Horus that Crowley prophesied over 100 years ago. When you look back now, essentially, at least from my standpoint, everything this guy was talking about is now coming true. It's quite astounding.
Yeah, I think you mentioned before something about Crowley. I guess he was talking to that, I don't know, angel, demon, and he told him, I guess, about the new, the age of the Aquarius. And the numbers?
Well, right. Well, it's this astronomical phenomenon. Crowley was well aware of this, called the precession of the equinoxes. Crowley doesn't call it that. He calls it the equinox of the gods. Same thing. Crowley foretold this new age coming, which he called the age of Horus. It's the age of Aquarius. Again, same thing, just interchangeable names. But what Crowley does is, and that's so astounding, is he describes it. He gets into what it is, what the new sun god is, what it looks like, what its worship is. He assigns this thing numbers. He gives this thing a number. And then the number, the two numbers that he winds up giving this new sun god, he identifies a few numbers out there. Two of the main ones is this killing curse, as this grand kill number. Which is the number 42, and then the number of this new sun god, which he calls Oz, O-Z, is the number 77. And these two numbers are, of course, the Wizard of Oz of all things. 42 is the rainbow, if you don't know. Human beings can only perceive rainbows at 42-degree angles. It's this new age that is designating itself and announcing itself using these Crowleyan numbers, 42, 77. You'll see a few other numbers in there, 418, which is the word of the magic word of the new age, abrahadabra. You'll see the number 333 pop up, which is a demon known as Corazon, which is linked to this elemental known as the Dark Mother, which Crowley assigns the number 42 to. So it's very dark. It's very interesting stuff. But he in 1904, Crowley was contacted by his holy guardian angel, this thing named Awas, whose number is 93. That's another number you'll see popping up from time to time, and prophesied this new age. And what makes it so interesting is Crowley really designates and describes what this worship is. What this new age is going to look like. And what he talked about over 100 years ago is now coming to pass. And it's, like I said, it's quite astounding and disturbing.
Can you say what some of these things were that came to fruition?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so, like, for example, well, it's a long story. I'll try to describe it as best I can in the limited amount of time, in a limited amount of time. From what I can tell, this started at the Battle of Wounded Knee, where L. Frank Baum was working as a newspaper editor. The reason I say it started here is because this thing is it's not only, if it was just numbers, that would be one thing, but these numbers are always assigned, pop up in these tragedies, and they're inescapable. I mean, they plaster them. And that's why I believe that there's a curse also related to this. L. Frank Baum, the man who wrote the Wizard of Oz novels, he, at the Battle of Wounded Knee, he actually ran a newspaper and he wrote an editorial calling for the genocide of all Native Americans. And I believe that this article spurned a curse on him put out probably by a skinwalker or a group of skinwalkers that was hexed L. Frank Baum for reasons I cannot answer. And I don't know the answer to this, and I know the Native Americans won't tell me. For whatever reason, this curse did not seem to go after Frank Baum or his family. It kind of lay dormant. And it stays dormant until about 1938-39 with the release of The Wizard of Oz. This is where this thing really starts to become kinetic. And the other thing that makes this thing so utterly bizarre is when this thing strikes. I was on another show talking about this. I said it's a curse that's designating this new age of Horus, because all the numbers that Crowley talked about, Oz, the sun god, Baphomet, it's number 77. This dark mother elemental, the number 42, which is the rainbow, of course, over the rainbow, Wizard of Oz. Oz, O-Z, is the name of the book, Wizard of Oz. Oz is the name of the sun god. O-Z, it's Baphomet. He calls it Oz, Crowley does. And you'll find these other numbers. So that it's doing two things. It's designating this new solar age that is coming, which the high watermark of was September 11th, 2001. And it is also using these numbers to kill people, to draw attention to itself. The Wizard of Oz is when the filming of The Wizard of Oz is when this thing starts to become kinetic. And I mean, so like, for example, The Wizard of Oz, I'd have to pull up my notes here, but The Wizard of Oz filmed, I think from like October 13th to like March 14th, started filming around October 13th. I have the exact dates. It's not in front of me right now, so I'm going off of memory. I could pause and pull this up, which would make it easier. But off the top of my head, The Wizard of Oz began filming, I want to say, on October 13th of 1938. It got done filming around March 14th of 1939. It was 154 days. 154 is 77 times 2, and 154 days is 40%, 42% of the solar year. So, I mean, right off the bat, we had these two kill numbers. The Wizard of Oz was released on August 25th, 1939. 7 days later, if you read Crowley, 7 is the high evil number. 7 days later, World War II started. You'll find these numbers scattered throughout World War II. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, April 4th month, 20, 2 plus 0, 2, 4, 2. What was the name of the car he always drove around in? Mercedes-Benz 770. Again, just starting in 1938, all the way up to 9/11 and post 9/11, you name any tragedy, any death, Columbine, 9/11, the Kennedy assassination, the death of Princess Diana, these numbers, 77, 42, 333, 418, plaster them. I mean, they cover them. And it is just astounding to me to see these numbers turn up in these record, they scream off the page at you. What makes this thing so utterly macabre to study, though, is when you look at these tragedies, the more body count, the higher the body count, especially when you're dealing with the deaths of children, innocent people, 9/11, Columbine, Sandy Hook, always buried in there, somewhere, somehow, will be this latent little Wizard of Oz reference. And it is so utterly macabre to find it. And it's kind of this ways thing of like laughing at you, saying, we're here, we're doing all this. And, there will always be, whether it's the Kennedy assassination, whether it's 9/11, there will always be a latent Wizard of Oz citation hidden in there somewhere. Incredible.
When you said even with Princess Diana, and that has...
Oh, sure. So here, let me pull this up. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I'm going to have to pull this up on my computer screen because, I was just writing about this. I just can't remember all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So just give me a second. Let me just pull up my document. This is the book.
Wow.
I'm pulling up the book that I'm working on. Let me just pull this up, and we'll get into some of the Princess Diana stuff. And this is just, surface scratching material here. So if you read Crowley's Gematria, and of course, Diana, in mythology, who is Diana, right? It's the moon goddess, correct? Isn't Diana the, ultimate moon goddess in mythology?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're dealing with Diana, we
Mm-hmm.
always look upwards, right? We're always looking towards the moon. So the Crowleyan number in his Gematria for the moon is the number 81. And of course, Princess Diana was married in 1981. and she was gifted in 1981 a Ford Escort Ghia as an engagement present. The words Ford Escort Ghia have a value using reverse Pythagorean reduction of 77. Its license plate number was WEV297W. That has an ordinal value of 370, which Crowley says is the supreme aspect of the goat of the Sabbath. That's the new sun god. And then we get into, of course, Diana is, of course, the moon. So we got to look towards the moon to see what's going on in her life. She was born on July 1st, 1961, which is under the sign of Cancer the Crab, which is governed by the moon. 14 days before she wed, 14 is 7/7, right? 7 plus 7, 7/7. There was a lunar eclipse on July 17th. 2 days after she was married, the moon was blacked out by the sun during a solar eclipse. And a solar eclipse in mythology is always an ill omen. That's the kiss of death. And this, of course, hexed her nuptials, ending in marriage 787 weeks later in August 1996. The one thing that this curse loves to do is overlap. When you find a tragedy, you always find a reference to something else. So with Diana, you always find a reference to the coronavirus. On 9/11, you always find a reference to the coronavirus. With this, you will always find, like for example, with Diana, we will find a reference to the Kennedy assassination. This thing loves overlapping these tragedies. So her marriage ended 787 weeks later. Lee Harvey Oswald, when he was shot on November 24th, died 787 minutes into the day. So it's 787 repeating itself. And again, it's the jinx overlapping. And Lee Harvey Oswald died 49 hours after Kennedy's assassination. 49 is 7/7, 7 squared. Diana's first son, this is of course the heir to the English throne, William, was born on June 21st, 1982. That's also under the sign of Cancer. That's the moon again. And he was born on the summer solstice. And what makes him so interesting is on the night of the summer solstice, there was a new moon passing between the sun and the earth, producing a solar eclipse. And the solar eclipse happened in the house of Gemini, the twins, i.e. the Twin Towers. And again, this is foreshadowing 9/11. Her second son, Harry, was born a few days after a full moon on September 15th, 1984. That's a date that has a value of 77 using Pythagorean reduction. Again, that's the goat of Mendes. That's the new sun god. At the time of his birth, at the time of Prince Harry's birth, there was a song climbing the United States pop chart called Desert Moon by Dennis DeYoung, which was at the time of his birth number 49, which is again 7 squared. And it eventually cracked the top 10. 14 days before Diana died, there was a full moon. And on the night of her death, August 31st, 1997, the moon was a waning crescent. That means it's dying, disappearing in the house of Leo the lion. And Leo rules the heart. And of course, Diana died of heart failure. Her heart was badly damaged in the car crash. So the moon signified her death on the night she died. And the night after she died, this is on September 1st, 1997, excuse me, there was another solar eclipse. And this foreshadows, of course, 9/11, 2001, which occurred 49 months later, which is again 7 times 7, 77. Interestingly, Prince William was born at 9:03 GMT, excuse me, and 93 is Aleister Crowley's code number for his mantra, do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. The boy, William, weighed 7 pounds, and he was the first child born to a Princess of Wales in 77 years. So, this is how, these numbers turn up with these people. And again, I am scratching the surface with this. There's a whole lot more, but these are how these Crowleyan numbers are popping up, designating these tragedies, and announcing these new, this new sun god, this new era through death and destruction.
Incredible. I think I heard you on another podcast talking about Michael Jackson and Kobe Bryant and how they kind of have the same numbers.
Yeah. I mean, you will, you will find this stuff, with Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson, Stanley Kubrick. Let me pull up another document.
I think you mentioned that there's always that some kind of Wizard of Oz, something like a ruby slip or a ruby something or something like that.
Correct. Correct. The one for Diana, there's a couple of them with Diana. The one that's the most easiest to pick up on was at her funeral. Elton John did a remake of "Candle in the Wind," and this was the song about Marilyn Monroe. If you're not aware, that song appeared on his album "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road." So
Wow.
that's your Wizard of Oz reference for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty creepy. That's one of many. Let me pull up the Kobe Bryant stuff. I think I have this one another. Yeah, here we go. Well, Kobe Bryant is interesting because he invokes the numbers 77 and 42. He does it intentionally, but I don't think he knew what he was doing. These are numbers you would not want to use intentionally. Kubrick is the same way. Kubrick is done in by this thing because of a movie called The Shining, where he uses the number 42 all over the place. I think he was using it to reference the reign of the Antichrist. There's a lot of biblical imagery, Book of Revelation imagery in The Shining, but I don't think he was aware of Crowley's Gematria. Kobe Bryant's number, he had two numbers. His first one was 24, which is 42 backwards. And that reflected, he played on a team called the Aces, the Lower Merion High School team. And as a freshman, the team finished 4-20, which is 42, 4-20, 4-2. He reverses it. He uses 24, to recognize this. But in his following 3 seasons at high school, the record was 77-13. And he liked that. He liked that number 77. And when you look at his trading cards, they're always the number 77. You will constantly see he's on card 77, 77 this, 77 that. And then what's interesting with him is the last Halloween of his life, his family dressed as the Wizard of Oz cast. And he died 42 days, 42 weeks before his 40, or something like that, weeks before his 42nd birthday. Again, and 42 is, if you read Crowley, 42 is the kill number. That number has to be there. 42 is the death number. And the nexus to that with the Wizard of Oz is, like I said, 42 is the rainbow. Human beings can only observe the rainbow from a 42-degree angle. So, the two most deathly numbers for Crowley, 77, the new sun god, Oz, is, of course, the Wizard of Oz, and 42, the rainbow, as in over the rainbow. So because of this, you always find these little latent Wizard of Oz reference in there. Michael Jackson, let me pull up the other document. He's easier to pick up on because Michael Jackson's played the Scarecrow in The Wiz, which is a remake of The Wizard of Oz. So he was actually in a Wizard of Oz pastiche, and he played the character of the Scarecrow. The word Scarecrow actually has, let me see a sec. The name Scarecrow actually has a value of 42 using Pythagorean reduction. So let's see here. Michael Jackson. Okay, if you look at his name, Michael Jackson, Michael Joseph Jackson. Michael is 7 letters. Joseph is 7 letters. Jackson is 7 letters. That's 777. If you read Crowley, the number 777 is the satanic forces of the Kabbalah marshaled. So anytime you see 777, that's bad news. What makes him interesting is the name Michael Joseph Jackson actually has a value, a reverse ordinal value of 343, and that's 7 cubed. That's 7 times 7 times 7. That's amazing. He's in the Wizard of Oz remake, The Wiz, where he plays the Scarecrow. That's no good. Let's see here. This is one of the things that does in 9/11 is if you watch The Wiz with Michael Jackson and Diane Ross, Emerald City is the World Trade Center, is the World Trade Center complex, which is the Twin Towers. So they actually turn the Wizard of Oz, the land of Oz, into the World Trade Center. Not very good because the Wizard of Oz is all over 9/11. So let's see here. We have Michael Jackson. We have his album Off the Wall, 42 minutes, bad news. Thriller, 42-minute runtime, bad news. His two longest-serving number ones were Billie Jean and Black and White, both on top of the charts for 7 weeks, 77, not good. His Neverland Ranch has a value of 77 using Pythagorean reduction. Its address is 5225 Figuro Mountain Road. 5252 is 77. 52 is 5 plus 2 is 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. 77. And Michael Jackson was obsessed. There's an interesting story with Jackson. He, in the late 80s and early 90s, started believing he was cursed. This is when he was running into problems with the pedophilia, and he went to a psychic about this, and they told him to embrace the number 7, not realizing Crowley had cursed it. If you're familiar with like the Bible, and even in Islam, 7 is a divine number. I mean, it's 7 days of creation. Crowley turns that on his head for the New Age and says this number is now totally evil. And when you look at Jackson, I mean, he was constantly using this number 7 in his performance. I don't think he knew what he was doing, to sort of ward off this hex, not knowing that it was bringing him down. I mean, when he performed, he always taped up 3 of his fingertips so 7 would remain free.
Is that why he did that?
The Michael Jackson network the newsletter was Network 7. On his Dangerous LP, which has a runtime of 77 minutes, there's an armband he wears with 777 on it. Let's see here. If you watch the video Scream, the music video, he wears a bodysuit with the number 7 on it. His final album is released on October 30th, 2001. That's my 30th birthday. That's 49 days after September 11th. That's 49. That's 7 squared, 7 times 7. Again, bad news. And his final album had a runtime of 77 minutes. Not bad. I mean, not good. He signed his last will and testament on July 7th, 77. And his televised funeral was 7 years later on July 7th, 09. 7 years, 7-7. So, again, this is, Michael Jackson, the pedophilia, child molestation cake. He was acquitted on the 7th day of jury deliberations. It was 14 counts. That's 7 doubled, 77. So yeah, you get the idea that I was on another show saying, well, how do you find these numbers? I mean, believe me when I tell you, they scream off the page. I mean, there's no way this can be a coincidence. I mean, it's just too pervasive. Again, whether it's the Kennedy assassination, Lee Harvey Oswald, 9/11, Columbine, Sandy Hook, the Aurora shooting, these numbers are all over the place.
Incredible. What about the Ukraine war or the Israel war going on? Does that have?
I've been asked about them. They're too early on. It's too early to tell. I got to let them play out a little bit. But I guarantee you, this stuff will be in there. I have no doubt about it.
I think I heard you say something before about Taylor Swift. Was it bad news or good news? I don't remember.
No, I'm investigating her. She plays around with this stuff too, and she's got bad news with this stuff also. I can't read anything for that, but yeah, she has some bad numbers with her also, with the number 77, 42. Yeah, she's no good either, and she just did a video where she's in the Wizard of Oz. She's on the Yellow Brick Road again. Yeah, it's the Karma video, and that's not good. The one thing that was interesting on 9/11 was a lot of people aren't aware of this, was the police code. In New York City, the NYPD police code for a massive catastrophe, seldom used, is 1060. This is, of course, went out a couple times on 9/11 after the planes hit. Not only that, 1060 is the production code for the Wizard of Oz, if you don't know. So literally, when the police are sending out code 1060, which is, you're right, 7, also 1 plus 0 plus 6 plus 0, 7. But 1060 is the Wizard of Oz. It's the production code. And when Flight 175 struck the South Tower, the people on the plane, including the people in the tower that died, was 1,060 people. 1060, again, the Wizard of Oz. Fascinating.
And a 7 still. Wow. So should we?
Well, yeah. If you want to get into the stuff with 9/11 with 7s, hang on one second. I mean, it's really disturbing when you look at it on 9/11, and especially at the Pentagon with that number. So let's see here. And again, these are all Crowleyan numbers. So yeah, the 1060 code was issued for the massive emergency. That's, of course, the Wizard of Oz code number. Flight 11 took out 7 floors on the North Tower. And that's, of course, floors 93 to 99. 93 is Crowley's Do What Thou Wilt. But let's see here. That was the thing. On 9/11, 343 firefighters died. 343 is 7 cubed again. That's 7 times 7 times 7. What makes 9/11 so interesting is on 9/11, years earlier, I believe in 1956, Walt Disney aired on TV The Rainbow Road to Oz. So 9/11 actually syncs with the Rainbow World of Oz with Walt Disney. It was released on the same day years earlier. The first flight that hit was Flight 11, which hit the North Tower at 8:46 a.m. The final flight, which is 93, which crashed in Shanksville, struck down at 10:03 a.m., which is 77 minutes later. So let's see here. One of the ones that's really interesting. Flight 11 departed Logan International Airport on runway 4R. R is the 18th letter of the alphabet, so that's 418. That's abrahadabra. That's the magic word of the New Age, according to Crowley. If you get into Gematria, the term 11th September has a value of 77 using Pythagorean production. The terrorist attacks on that day killed 2,977 people. The book on the Wizard of Oz, the seminal, the definitive book on the production of Wizard of Oz, the making of the Wizard of Oz, by Arjun Harmitz, was published in 1977. The Wizard of Oz had a budget of $2,777,000, 777 again. Yeah, but where this really gets screwy is when you get into the Pentagon, because you have Flight 77, which departed Dulles International Airport, which is on the 77th parallel, and it hit Flight 77 hit the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m., which is 77 minutes later. The Pentagon is 77 feet tall, has 7 floors, and crashed into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m., which is 577 minutes into the day. And I should point out also, we mentioned about the Wizard of Oz's, these little mocking Wizard of Oz's references. The wingspan of Flight 77 was 124 feet. And when it crashed into the Pentagon, it killed 124 federal employees. You're not aware MGM hired 124 midgets to play the Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz. So again, this is your little Wizard of Oz citation that this thing loves to screw around with. I mean, it always sort of laughs at you with stuff like that. So that's just another one of these little deathly Wizard of Oz citations. So yeah, this is really the subject matter of my next book. It's the next 2 books I'm working on, and like I said, I'm really just scratching the surface on this. But you see how interesting.
Very, very interesting. I mean, I don't see it all. For you, I guess, I don't know if you just look at you just see those things and they kind of stand out to you. It's amazing how you see all those things.
Yeah, it's just a lot of research, and it's just a lot of it's very tedious research, but it's you can find this stuff, and like I said, it's when you really start examining it, and you kind of get in tune with it, these numbers just start jumping off the page. I mean, and it's just like, whoa. I mean, it doesn't even become a question of like, will I find it? It's like, how many times will I find it? And, where's it going to be? That's all it becomes an issue of. And the one thing I will also point out is, just real quick, is the one thing that this curse also likes to do, and it's very, very good at, is foreshadowing and overlapping things. So, for example, you will find in 9/11, you will find references around the World Trade Center to the coronavirus. Same thing with the death of Princess Diana. You will find in the JFK assassination, a reference to, 9/11 somehow. There's always these little subtle overlaps, that foreshadow and tweak and turn up here and there. That's one of the things that make you'll be looking at this, and it's like and then, you'll be studying it, and I'll be researching it. And all of a sudden, they'll be like, "Oh, there's the coronavirus reference. There's the Wizard of Oz reference." So, like, I mean, for example, like with Princess Diana, when she died, and you'll remember this, if you remember, under the tunnel, above the tunnel was the Flame of Liberty, the Statue of Liberty. You remember what I'm talking about here? It's the model of the flame on the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. And it became a makeshift memorial for Princess Diana. And actually, nowadays turned it into like it's like not only the Statue of Liberty, Flame of Liberty, but now it's the Princess Diana Memorial. That's right across the street from a restaurant called like the Grand Corona Restaurant, i.e., coronavirus. There was a band in the early '90s called. They came out with a song called "The Rhythm of the Night." And the band was called Corona. And if you look at the CD cover, it's the Twin Towers. So you will always find these little subtle like nexuses, like, oh, there's Columbine. Oh, but there's a reference in Columbine to 9/11, or there's a reference in Columbine to, the death of Princess Diana. That's another thing that makes this really interesting is, you look at the Diana death, you'll find a reference in there to Lee Harvey Oswald. On 9/11, you'll find something in there to something else that you weren't expecting to see, and that's again one of this ways this curse works. It loves overlapping. It loves using one death and one tragedy where it'll hint at another one. Fascinating stuff.
But you can't look at that and predict anything, can you? You can.
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's a great question. I've been asked that before. I mean, can I sort of seeing the way that this thing works. The best way for me to describe it is it's a timing sequencer. This thing is like watching a lottery drawing. It's numbers and it's timing. That's the way this thing always operates. The problem is you're dealing with a lot of numbers. I mean, could it be 7 months or 7 years? Could it be 49 weeks or 49 months? That's what makes it hard. I mean, it operates on numbers. And it's a timing sequencer, and it operates on the Wizard of Oz. There will always be some sort of Wizard of Oz nexus in there. That has to be there. The way I kind of describe it on shows is, for me, it's like trying to predict it out. It's like watching, and this is where some of the stuff you were asking me about Taylor Swift, it's like watching a lottery drawing. If you see the number 1, so you see the number 77, that may not be so bad. But if you see it twice, now you're getting into dangerous territory. If you see the number 42 now turning up, now you're really into danger. But if you see, if you keep seeing it, it's like that kill number, that final ball will pop up, and that's going to be the death number. And that's when this thing will strike. And when it strikes, man, oh man, does this thing strike hard and fast. And, when you go through it and look at it, it's timing, it's numbers, and it's the Wizard of Oz. That is all this thing operates on. And, the one thing that I've learned, I've been looking at this thing now going on a year almost. I really started dissecting it probably around last April, May. And like I said, the one thing that really just screams off the page, off the computer screen, off the whatever, is the numbers and the Wizard of Oz. And that those will always be there. If they're not there, then it's not it. It's that simple. If those numbers and there's no Wizard of Oz reference there, then it's something else. It's just, a random act or whatever. But when you see those numbers, and believe me, they will scream off the page, then it's this hex, going to work
incredible.
Again.
What about with the coronavirus? Have you seen any of these references in it during, really?
Oh, of course. Well, the one thing with coronavirus is that makes this, let me pull this up real fast, that makes this so disturbing with corona. By the way, the origins of the coronavirus, L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz, wrote three of his Wizard of Oz novels, at the Coronado Hotel, Corona, Wizard of Oz. I mean, so that's one of the things that does this thing in. One of the catalysts for the coronavirus, believe it or not, was Marilyn Monroe, of all people. Yeah, she filmed a movie at the Hotel de Coronado called Some Like It Hot. And that has a lot of bad things going on in. No, but the thing with, let me find this. I think the one thing that was always strange with the coronavirus.
Take your time.
All right, here we go. And if you're wondering where the coronavirus also gets tied into this, the person who was in The Wizard of Oz is Judy Garland. A garland is a crown, is a corona.
Oh my God.
So.
You're right.
All right, here I'm just. Well, here we go. Here's what makes the coronavirus so disturbing, and you can go look this up yourself. Is the coronavirus always was reported, either deaths or infections, and you can go look this up ad nauseum. It always, from the beginning of it to the end, to when it faded off, always was reported in waves of 77, 154, which is 77 times 2, 231, which is 77 times 3, 308, which is 77 times 4, 385, which is 77 times 5, 462, which is 77 times 6, 539, which is 77 times 7, 616, which is 77 times 8, 693, which is 77 times 3 cubed, 770, which is 77 times 10, and 777. Always, always, always is how that, if you go type in those numbers, corona infection, corona death, any one of those numbers, they will always pop up. It always, always, always came in waves of those numbers, always. And of course, we have to have the Dark Mother there. And of course, the reason she turns up, of course, was the virus gave the license of the U.S. government to remove Title 42, the Dark Mother 42. So there she is right there.
Wow.
So that's the way this thing was always worked. Corona, the nexus to the Wizard of Oz with the coronavirus is L. Frank Baum wrote 3 of his Wizard of Oz books in the Coronado Hotel, and he actually designed the crown room, which is the ballroom at the Coronado Hotel, which has a giant crown in it. So that's interesting. Judy Garland's last name literally is a garland, means crown. So that's again where this is coming from. So you'll get it with the coronavirus. The like I said, the Princess Diana, the memorial for her is set across from the street from the Cafe Coronado or Corona. So there's your little coronavirus reference with Princess Diana's death. You'll find it with the Twin Towers. Like I said, there was a band called Corona which released a song in the early 90s called Rhythm. Rhythm was Rhythm of My Life. If you look at the CD cover, it's the Twin Towers, Corona. Kobe Bryant had a crown tattoo on his left arm, so there's a nexus with Kobe Bryant. So again, this death curse loves overlapping things. It loves using one tragedy to foreshadow another tragedy. You will find nexuses of Kennedy's assassination to the Wizard of Oz. That's the way this thing works.
So can you, I don't want to say predict, but kind of predict that something could be coming?
Sure. It's I don't think this curse is going away anytime soon. It seems to be very, very kinetic. It seems to be very active. One of the dates that this thing loves to screw around with is July 16th. That has a high rate of frequency. July 16th is July 7th month. 16 is 1 plus 6, 7. So whenever that date rolls around, I kind of sit up in my chair. The thing with this curse is one thing that I don't want to say it doesn't like to do, because you never know, but it doesn't like to repeat itself. And what I mean by that is if it uses a date like 49 days, it won't use it again. It'll use 49 weeks. And it does do it sometimes, but what makes it hard to predict is, again, you're dealing with, is it 7 weeks, 7 days? Is it 77 weeks or 77 months? 49 days, 49 weeks, 49 hours. That's what makes it so kind of hard to predict out. But that's even 42, and 93. Those are numbers that this thing also screws around with. But again, you will always find these Crowleyan numbers present. It's designating this new solar age, which is here, the age of Aquarius. Pisces is over, Christianity's over, Judaism's over, Islam's is over. Forget them. This is the new age of Horus. It is here. Crowley predicted this over 100 years ago. Everything this guy talked about is now coming to pass. And it is just amazing to me to see it all being played out.
That
with these
must
numbers.
be, when you're doing this, it must be like, wow, it's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I cannot tell you how many, where I've been working on this. I mean, how many come ons I've experienced. I mean, where you're just looking at this and you're like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it's Lee Harvey Oswald, Oswald. The name his name Lee Harvey Oswald has a value of 77. And I should point out also the Wizard of Oz has a value of 77. And of course, Lee Harvey Oswald is killed by the Ruby Slippers, Jack Ruby. So it's all Wizard of Oz citations. I mean, if you look at things like the Murrah building, what caused McVeigh and Nichols to do the Murray building explosion? The Ruby Slippers, Ruby Ridge. It's always this little Wizard of Oz citation in there. The one thing that I found looking at this is it's very mocking. This curse is very pernicious. It's very vicious. It's very sardonic. It's very cruel. It likes laughing at death. The more suffering that's involved, the more children that are murdered, the more this thing is pronounced. And it wants you to know it. I mean, there is no question about that. It wants you to know that it was behind this thing. Again, and you will find it with for example, with like Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook shooter, Adam Lanza, when he was inside the building, shot off 154 rounds, 77 times 2. Dylan Roof, when he shot up the African-American church, peeled off exactly 77 rounds. It will always, those numbers will always be there.
So weird. Because before 7, like you said, 7 is a good number. It was 6 that was a bad number. That was
right.
the number of Satan, right? 666. But now it's not that way no more. It's 7. 777.
7 is 777 is if you read Aleister Crowley, he says 777 is the satanic forces of the Kubala marshaled. He said this is as evil as you can get. And he wasn't kidding.
Isn't.
He says 7 is totally evil. 77 is no good. 77 is the number of the goat of Mendes. That's the new sun god. He calls it Heru Raha, which means Horus Sunflesh. But then in his work, in book 4, which is Magic and Theory, he says Heru Raha, Horus, transforms into the sabbatical goat, the goat of Mendes, the Baphomet of the Knights Templar. He said that is the new sun god. That's what the sun looks like in the House of Aquarius. So he'll tell you. I mean, if you read the Book of the Law, he says this thing is bloodthirsty. He says it loves death and destruction. And what's interesting is, and he doesn't really mince words with this. And this is what again makes this thing so interesting. He says in his literature, in his books, Crowley says the goat of Mendes accepts 2 forms of worship. One of them is environmentalism, climate change, and the other one of them is transgenderism. He said those are the 2 religions of the New Age. He says when you start seeing those creep up, he said you are in the age of Horus. He said it is here. He said when you start seeing men thinking they are women or women thinking they are men, and you start seeing worship of the earth, or he calls it fear of the earth being on fire. He said that's when you know the age of Horus is with us.
Oh my God, that's now. That's now.
Yeah,
that's probably
now.
like the past 20 years or so. It's been kind of really incorporating all that.
The kickoff, the way I see it is that the Wizard of Oz, the production of the Wizard of Oz was the build up to this, and you have this build up with these incidents like Columbine. You'll find, by the way, you'll find this in hurricanes also, and the weather. Some of the big hurricanes have these numbers. You'll find it with the nuclear meltdowns of like Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. You'll find these numbers with that stuff. And then you have the main event, which is 9/11. That is without question the event horizon of this thing. But even after it, you still have it happening. And I kind of have come to the conclusion of, well, why is it continuing to happen? The reason why this stuff is going forward with these school shootings and what have you is this thing isn't going to take its foot off the gas pedal until it's recognized. Until this thing is recognized and starts getting worshipped properly, which is still probably going to be at least 80 to 100 years away. I don't think this thing is going to take its foot off the gas pedal. I think you're going to still start seeing a lot more death and destruction. I mean, if you want me to be a prophet and say, and having looked at this stuff for the last 8-9 months, my estimate, talking to you here in mid-January of 2024, is this thing isn't going to take its foot off the gas pedal until it gets its propers. That's what I think.
Wow, that's incredible. And you only just started touching on this 777.
Right. Well, I started looking at this stuff. I started looking at this stuff about March, April, May of last year. So it's been
7 months
9 months
ago.
now. Um, yeah. Well, here's what prompted me. There are some other people out there who will start pointing out, why are there these little Wizard of Oz citations around like the Kennedy assassination or 9/11, and it's really these Crowleyan numbers. But when I started looking at this, my reaction to all this was, oh, this is a coincidence. I mean, this is nonsense. I mean, when I go into this stuff, I go into it with the highest level of skepticism. And the initial subject was 9/11. And when you start getting into the things with the Pentagon and the Wizard of Oz, it really makes you sit back. And I thought, okay, maybe there is something out there. And I thought, well, let me start looking at these other tragedies. And I looked at Columbine. I was like, oh, my God, here it is again. And then when I went to the Murrah building, I mean, I was like, oh, my God, here it really is. That's when I started looking at this and thinking, wait a minute, there is something to this here. I wrestled really hard to come up with the reason I think there's a death curse, a Native American death curse attached to this, is because I think the numbers would turn up, but it's just the record number of the carnage associated with them seems to be that there's some sort of impetus, some sort of really destructive impetus behind it. Crowley designating the numbers and writing the numbers, I didn't know if that was enough for this type of carnage. There seemed to have to be some sort of spiritual, Native American force behind this. I researched Aleister Crowley and L. Frank Baum ad nauseum. There is no reference anywhere in any of Crowley's literature or any of the books about Crowley that he knew L. Frank Baum, or that he even was aware of him, or that he even knew he existed, or even knew about any of these Wizard of Oz stories. There's nothing. And I kind of started looking. I thought, well, is there anyone out there who had an axe to grind with L. Frank Baum? And sure enough, you find that he was calling for the genocide of Native Americans. I thought, okay, well, now I've got something here, because this thing acts as this thing operates like it's a curse, like it's a killing curse of some kind. It doesn't seem to be random, and it's operating on these numbers that are both using Crowley's Gematria to kill, while at the same time designating this new age of horse. That is the best way I can describe it. Maybe you could take the Native American aspect maybe out of it and say, well, it's Crowley's Gematria, it's the new age. I buy that, but then I don't think you'd have these little Wizard of Oz citations in there, which are always there. Because Crowley knew nothing about that. There's no evidence anywhere. I mean, believe me, I have all his books. I have all of Crowley's books. I have tons of the books about Crowley. Israel Regardie, Tobias, Gary Lockman. I mean, you name it. I mean, I have all of them here in my library, all of Crowley's books. There is no mention of Baum or the Wizard of Oz anywhere. And I just felt like, no, there has to be some sort of axe to grind with L. Frank Baum for this citation just to miraculously appear. I can tell you this also. There is no way possible that this is some sort of like a human endeavor. There is no way possible human beings or a group of human beings, I don't care if they're the Illuminati or the CIA or what have you, that can encode numbers like this. I mean, it's not possible. I mean, it's just not humanly possible to encode things like this. I mean, how many people die? How much time elapses behind something? I mean, it's just impossible. I mean, Judy Garland dies on June 22nd, who of course was Dorothy Gale, dies on June 22nd, 1969. 49 days later, which is 77, 7 times 7, is the first night of Helter Skelter, Charles Manson. Yeah. It's always this 7 base timing sequencer with the Wizard of Oz. Always.
So it's this demon. You believe in demons? You have to.
Well, it's a couple things. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there's definitely a demonic presence to this. The 77 is a sun god, so I wouldn't necessarily. It's a vicious sun god, but I wouldn't call him a demon. But it associates itself with two. Well, one I would call an elemental, which is this thing called the Dark Mother, is what Crowley calls it, and this is the thing that associates with the number 42. Is this very dark, vicious, violent elemental card, the Dark Mother. Then there is a demon that pops up from time to time. If you read Crowley's literature, 42, this Dark Mother associates with this demon known as Corazon. What makes this interesting is his number is 333. And you will find, again, from time to time, not always, a daisy chain of threes. 333, 33333, and you know if you see that this demon is somewhere involved in this. If you see that number 333 popping up, you know that this demon's influence is being exerted. One of the things with the Kennedy assassination, for example, was Jack Ruby. His nightclub was called the Carousel Club, and it was on Commerce Street. Carousel C, Club C,
All right,
Commerce
ABC's
C.
3.
C is the third letter of the alphabet. Yeah, 333. Exactly, it's the third letter of the alphabet. So that's where this, and the other thing I can report after looking at this is the number 77 jumps off the page. That thing doesn't have a problem with being noticed. The number 42, this dark mother elemental and the Corazon demon, they're more in the shadows. They don't like being picked up upon. When I do this, I can always tell that it's like a real deep, dark search to try to find their numbers. You will find them; they'll be there, but they're much more harder to find. They conceal themselves much more clandestinely. They're much more lurking in the shadows than 77. That number's out in the open. That thing stands out like a sore thumb. But when you see 77, you will always find 42 walking hand in hand with it. You will occasionally find 333 with it, but they lurk in the shadows. They're a little more harder to find.
Any of those numbers did you find maybe with the Maui fires here in Hawaii?
I'd have to look. Again, the research on this is ongoing, and I've reached a point with it. I have to be honest with you, where I had reached a point with it where I kind of had to say stop. What I mean by that is I'm doing Symbolism 4, and I started noticing these numbers with other things. I thought, wait a minute, I gotta call it a day here. I mean, I'll be writing on this forever. So what I decided to do was I'm going to do another book, and this one called Symbolism Oz, where I'm just going to go into the Wizard of Oz, and I will definitely be investigating. I mean, I can tell you pointedly, this number flirts. I haven't fully investigated it, so I can't give you an answer right now, but I can pretty much tell you that these numbers turn up with Kurt Cobain of Nirvana and Prince.
That's right.
The fires, yeah, they could. I mean, certainly the Ukrainian war and the thing with Israel. But I had reached a point with it where I had to say, okay, stop. I just can't keep going with this. This book will never end. So what I'm doing is I'm actually working on, I'm actually finishing up this portion right now with Princess Diana. When that gets done, I'm going to stop, continue on with the book, and then anything else I come up with, whether it be Kurt Cobain or the fires, which I have not looked into, Martin Luther King Jr., I will definitely put in Symbolism Oz, Malcolm X. These are people that I want to research. I have not researched. I can tell you this thing is plasters the Kennedy family, Robert Kennedy, Teddy Kennedy, people like that. But, there's still a lot more research that I'm doing. But, I had reached a point with Symbolism 4 with the Princess Diana stuff. I thought, okay, this is where I'm calling it a day. If something else pops up with JFK or Princess Diana, yeah, I'll put it in. But, I can't keep going. I mean, this book will never end. So I'm going to do Symbolism 4, and then I'm just going to do a separate Wizard of Oz book, which is going to get into, this killing curse. It's going to get into the Gnostic themes of the Wizard of Oz. It's going to get into, the Kabbalistic themes of the Wizard of Oz, the Pink Floyd, song nexus with the Wizard of Oz. We're going to get into all that. I'm just going to do a whole Wizard of Oz book, and it's all going to be
That's going to be really cool.
Yeah.
And nice ring, by the way. Is that a Mason ring? I could see it, but I can't really see it.
Oh yeah. I have actually 4 rings on. This one here is my family coat of arms. This is a 32nd degree Scottish Rite ring. That's a real diamond in it. This I call it my 12 table ring. From 12 tables over, you'll be able to see it. And these 2 here are also Masonic rings. So yeah, I have all my Masonic bling bling on for tonight.
Is Masonic have any 7s in it?
There is a 7th degree. When it was crafted, this was all done with the old Piscean, Old Testament sort of stuff. I mean, I do now have to talk about that because, for example, it's good that you brought that up, actually, because in this new book I'm doing, Symbolism 4, one of the movies that I'm dissecting, or I already wrote about it, was the Batman movie, the last one that came out with Robert Pattinson as Batman. This is the one where Colin Farrell was Penguin. Chloe, what's her name? Zoe Kravitz was Catwoman. A very, 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 very good movie. If you watch that movie, the number 7 is pervasive in it, but the director is using it in the old biblical sense. This is not the Crowley stuff. He is using it as the old and New Testament biblical sense with the number 7. So now when I'm writing, I got to distinguish that. I've got to say, look, when you watch Batman, when you see this number 7, this is the old biblical take on this. This isn't the Crowley stuff. This is the Old and New Testament take on that. So now I've got to specify. So again, when it comes to the movies, it's always, when you're analyzing it, you have to put the stuff in context. And it was clear to me that Matt Reeves was obviously using the old Bible stuff with the number 7, not the Crowley material.
Yeah, it's incredible. And one more question. I think you mentioned a prophecy of Donald Trump in Lego movie. I think Simpson even had the Simpson.
Right. This is something I also touch on is movies as prophecy or prophetic. The term you will usually hear with this is predictive programming. It's not a big term that I'm a fan of, but I'll go with it. I call it more prophecy. Where there's loads of theories to account for this, from everything to the CIA to mysticism to the theories of people like Carl Jung, Emanuel Swedenborg, people like that. But no, you will definitely find movies that can be prophetic. The Lego movie, there is a character in that called President Business, which is clearly becomes president. He's clearly represents Donald Trump. It's interesting because the character wants to build walls around everything to segregate the Lego worlds. Trump is interesting because he has a lot of stuff he has some very, very interesting things going on with him. There was a book published by a guy named Ingersoll, I can't remember, that came out in the early 20th century called The Adventures of Little Baron Trump. And if you look at the drawing in the book of the kid, it looks just like Baron Trump. I mean, it looks just like him. Trump also did a set of mattress commercials in like around 2010 for, I think it was Sealy Mattress. I can't remember. It may have been Sealy. I think it may have been another one. And the two numbers that pop up in the commercial are 11 and 9 on November 9th. Of course, this was when he was elected president. So yeah, I mean, the idea of movies being prophetic. I'm just using Donald Trump. There are movies that predict 9/11. The movie The China Syndrome, which is about a nuclear reactor meltdown, came out about 2 weeks before the actual 3 Mile Island incident. So yeah, I mean, you will definitely find instances of films being prophetic. It's very uncanny. It's very strange.
I think even Simpsons had Donald Trump as the president coming down the escalator or something.
That actually is not. That actually came
did it
afterwards.
Really?
That's a bit of that. People get confused on that one. That actually came later.
And I know that they did predict, I guess, the Maui fire. They showed the Maui fire in one of their episodes a long time ago, which was kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, The Simpsons. The Simpsons is an interesting one because there is a very disturbing 9/11 reference in one of the Simpsons episodes. And yeah, I mean, when you get close to the event, I mean, you will find stuff going way back in time that predicts 9/11. But when you get really closer to it, then you will find this, instance where things are seem more prophetic. You'll find stuff with The Matrix, Fight Club, Donnie Darko, Vanilla Sky. At the beginning of the show, you were asking about Gnostic films. A lot of these Gnostic films have these 9/11 citations in them. Very bizarre.
Wow. I could talk to you forever. You're very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the Sensible Hippie, and we'll do it again.
So.
We'll do it again sooner,
I hope
not
so.
later.
I can't wait. But before we go, Ken, where can we find your work at and your books?
Sure, absolutely. Again, thank you, Maya, for having me on the Sensible Hippie. It was my pleasure to be here. The place to find me on the internet is my website. My website is my name, My name is Robert W. Sullivan IV. So my website is just that. It's www.robertwsullivan, and then for the fourth, it's the letter I, the letter V, Roman numerals, IV.com. robertwsullivan.iv.com. There are links there to purchase the books. There's information about me, information about upcoming shows I'm going to be on. When shows get pre-recorded, such as this one, and get stationed online, I will put them up there. There's, information about me. It's a very easy site to navigate, and there's certainly links to purchase the books. You can get them off of all the major online retailers: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Apple. They are all there. And again, if you're interested in me, just go to my website, www.robertwsullivan.iv.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. I really did. And you're so interesting. I can't wait to talk to you again.
Well, thank you for having me on. And yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again. And certainly when the new books come out, definitely
I will,
come out.
yes.
And that brings us to an end of another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast. I want to thank my guest, Robert Sullivan, for sharing his insights and expertise, making this a truly memorable discussion. To my wonderful listeners, thank you for tuning in and joining us on this journey through mysteries and symbolism. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family who might also appreciate these deep dives into the unknown. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your support means the world to me, and it helps us keep bringing you engaging content. Until the next time, stay curious and be ever vigilant for the symbolic clues that unfold in the world around us. Bye!